This has been a pet peeve with me for a while. Let me ask you a question. At a point like this, let me ask you a question. Would you burn down or bust up your own neighborhood for a guy you never met? Would you go do that? Would you go see that somebody was roughed up by the cops and the cop, and then the guy dies, the roughed up guy, the victim, and you say the cop is white and the victim is black and I'm black and I'm going to go out and burn down and bust up my own neighborhood for a guy I never met. Okay? I'm going to risk prison. And okay, not only that, but I'm going to burn down. We're supposed to believe that inner city black folks are so lacking in intelligence and imagination that not only will they burn down and bust up their own neighborhoods for a guy they never met, they'll do it as a pattern in practice. Over and over again, all the time, every year. In other words, yeah, the Irish marched up 3rd Avenue, presumably, because it goes uptown, up from the Five Corners. I think they got up to the 70s, but I have a feeling they maybe only got up to the 20s, the East 20s, 30s, 40s, Manhattan, East Side. But either way, one time, because they didn't want to fight the Irish in New York City, didn't want to fight in the Union Army during the Civil War in 1863. One time. Okay, it was the most destructive riot in U.S. history, right? The Civil War, leave it to the Irish, right? But as a pattern in practice, again, inner city black folks are so lacking, so the story goes, in intelligence and imagination that they'll burn down and bust up their own neighborhoods for a guy they never met as a pattern in practice. In fact, so predictably that the police commissioners in New York and Chicago and L.A. and Detroit and Cleveland and Chicago and Buffalo and Miami and Dallas and probably, and Phoenix, did we say L.A.? So predictably that the police commissioners say, what do they say? Not every year, most years, right? It's going to be a hot summer. It's going to be a hot summer. No, they're actively predicting race riots. You see, I think race riot, the idea of race riots, is racist. Nobody, if you believe it, and you're one of those liberal progressives out there, and I know you are, because I've been around liberal progressives, I've heard it say for 45 years, and probably so have you, right? The liberal progressives, the left of the left that I talk to, not only won't accept what I'm saying, that race riots are fake. We've seen the FBI there. We've seen the FEMA trucks. It doesn't make sense. Would you do it? And if you would burn down and bust up your own neighborhood for a guy you never, some people like to say to me, why haven't you done it yet? And could you bring 2 or 3 people to go along with you? Of course not. And then once it happens, what's the demographic of these rioters? Right? Like, why can't you break them up with a SWAT team? Well, how come there isn't counseling, like what to do to prevent it? You see, this is staged. People, this is staged. We've seen the FEMA trucks. We have the pictures. It probably even was true to a great extent in the 60s. We had riots in Buffalo, New York. My brother-in-law said we had riots in Detroit. No one's denying it. No one's denying that things happen. But who's setting the fires? And how come they can't be rounded up? And seriously, what's the demographic? A 38-year-old mother, a couple kids who might be a grandmother in a few years, someone who's done 5 to 10 or something for some felony somewhere, some young Turks, and if they're just young Turks, just kids, then you go and you just round them up. SWAT team, cops, it really would be not much of a problem. But they stage it. They even had an on-site reporter, a woman, right, with Don Lemon and who's the other, Chris Cuomo in the background, and she's doing her on-site with her microphone, right, in the camera, and she gets hit in the head. People, this stuff is staged. It's not real. The news is a show. Look, the proposition is this. We've known since the end of the 70s, right? We've talked about the CIA. We'll just call it the CIA. We could call it the Jesuits. We could call it the corporation, or Buckminster Fuller called the pirates, whatever, the military-industrial complex, but it's probably bigger than that. The Vatican, you want to bring in the Vatican, the British Royal Family, Muslim Brotherhood, the Communist Chinese, the European Union, Silicon Valley, whoever it is. This is all a show, and all we're saying is that, we'll just say the CIA, we learned in the 70s that they staged black operations, right? Black ops in other countries, right? Donald Sutherland, black ops, right? Assassination, coup d'etat, election rigging, and psychological warfare, or propaganda. The only proposition here, the only thing I'm saying is that this CIA, or this, big cabal, or the pirates, whatever you want to call them, do the same thing to us here in the United States. They do the same thing to Americans. Exactly. They assassinate leaders. They rig elections, right? They stage a coup d'etat, remove President Kennedy and Nixon in '74, and maybe President Al Gore, I don't know. And psychological warfare. Your press is like Pravda in the Soviet Union. It's like factually it might be right. Like maybe there was a 3-car pileup on the expressway yesterday, or an old movie star died last night, or the World Series is going to start at 8 o'clock. And even those you don't know about anymore because everything's so political. But the major stories like this happened, and this is how you're supposed to react. Okay, the shootings. Who knows what's going on with these shootings? But we know there's very suspicious surrounding evidence and circumstances. I mean, there are people who have connections. So anyway, let's just stick with race riots. The left of the left that I know, the liberal progressives, I have no notes here by the way, it's not that they won't accept this theory, which I know to be true, because there's no way anyone would burn down and bust up their own neighborhoods regularly for a guy they never met, predictably, right? It just, there's no, it's not that they won't accept this theory, the left of the left, the progressives I know. They won't even entertain it. It's sort of, it fits in, I think, and I think even some African Americans, I know, they're just, they're looking at the media too, and they're saying we, whoever, and are saying, yeah, there's some rough people in that area. See, it's meant to scare us. It's meant mostly, I think, to make white people in this country, or whatever you want to say, the majority of people in the country, afraid of inner city blacks and Latinos for the most part. It's also to continue and exacerbate the fear a lot of blacks and Latinos have for the white majority in this country, and to make conditions worse between cops and the citizens. Okay? Just think about it. Just ask yourself, would you burn down or bust up your own neighborhood for a guy you never met as a pattern and practice? Why do you assume inner city, our black folks, friends, and our families, in the inner cities would do the same thing? It's ridiculous. It's absurd. You know what I mean? But how far do people want to go, right? How far do you want to go in victim mentality? There are more black men in prison in this country than at college. Who did that? Rednecks? Did rednecks do that? Do we really think we went from 244 years of slavery in this country to 110 years of Jim Crow to complete enlightenment when it comes to racism and all that? No. It just morphed into the prison system. Now it's the prison system. Literally, kill or incarcerate as many black men as possible. And they all went along with it. Bill Clinton signed the crime bill in 1995, which put more black men in prison than any other single presidential act. Look at the cities that are controlled by Democrats. Look at those aforementioned cities: New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, Miami, Dallas. How are they doing? San Francisco. How are our conditions in terms of race? It's divide and conquer. It's keep us fighting each other, keep us suspicious. An editorial in the Baltimore Sun in 1916 talked about the Negro Giants. The Negro Giants are coming. I mean, can you believe that? And they were serious. Capital N, capital G. You see, it's a plan. It's a plan, I would say, some element of the deep state. When we say deep state, the permanent bureaucracies in military intelligence and CIA and in government, in the State Department, the Justice Department, and corporations, stuff like that. The deep state wants us divided at all times. We're never to come together. You see, peace and prosperity is what the deep state, including with the media, does not want. They don't want that. It has to be fear. It has to be war, poverty, disease, and death all the time, right? And we're saying no. We're saying we're not doing that, right? That's what we're saying. Okay, so I'll leave you. I'll go on. I know I digressed a little bit, but would you burn down or bust up your own neighborhood for a guy you never met? Would you do that? You know what I mean? Why would you assume someone else would? And why can't it be easily contained? Okay, so please think about that. Thank you.